And just about there. Great. All right, so we are, excuse me, live streaming to YouTube. Thanks everyone for joining. This is the OpenJS Foundation's Open Office Hours. Today's the 27th of February in the year 2020. And today we have Wes Todd from the Express project, who is going to share with us what they're working on and how folks can get involved, and you know, we can talk more after that, ask questions, and see what works. Take it away, Wes.
Awesome. Hey everybody, I'm Wes. Express obviously is a fairly well-established player in the JavaScript server space for a while now, and so I assume most people know what it is. I won't go into that unless people want me to, but what we're really focusing on right now is a couple of things. We're expanding the contributor base. We're working on the next major release. And then we're working on having a bunch of processes and tools in place to help make maintenance of such a large project a bit easier. So I'm going to talk first about expanding the contributor base, and then I'm going to talk about the tools that we're working on to do that, and then lastly I'll talk about what we're actually doing with Express 5. So
and let me interrupt you just really quickly, Wes. So first of all, some points of order. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, the Zoom chat. Feel free to speak up, or feel free to use the raise hand feature if anybody has a question or wants any clarification anywhere. This is meant to be a conversation, so if anybody has anything they want to know more about, please let us know. And then also, does anyone need any sort of a primer on Express or anything like that, or have any sort of like general questions before we dig into things? If not, then we'll get back to it.
Cool.
Thanks, Wes.
So just so you know, since I'm sharing my screen, I don't see the chat.
Yeah, I'll monitor.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So growing the contributor base. So as you can see on this screen here, I have this list which is out of date. And I'll go into why that's out of date in a minute, but of some of the top contributors across the project. So we have a ton of repos. We've got 3 GitHub organizations. So keeping track of who's working where has been sort of a historical problem for us. But as you can see, like Doug far and away contributes the most. So he's the primary maintainer and sort of the lead on the project. But then it falls like to quite a smaller number of contributions. And I'll be clear, these contributions are everything from commits to comments to issues opened. And
is that over a certain period of time?
Yeah, 90 days. And so, like I said,
okay.
It's out of date right now. So it's not the current 90 days. But I ran this for a while where it was being up to date, and it stays fairly consistent at this. I think this particular user was very active for this time period and has since dropped off. So like everything from sort of the here below is pretty variable depending on the time frame, but it's almost always the same numbers, right? It's like Doug is up here doing a ton of stuff. I'm around doing some stuff, but then after that, it's as issues arise. Just to be so everybody's aware, Linus is on the TC, Blake is on the TC. Technically, Nifty Lettuce here is, but he or she, because I'm not actually sure I've met this person, is not super active on the TC part. But all the rest of these are pretty much just general contributors. So my point with this was our depth of lineup for contributors is fairly small. So what that has led to in the project is we spend a lot of time triaging issues. We spend a lot of time doing user support, And it's meant that in the past, couple of years, not a lot of the major features have been getting the attention we would like to put on them. So Doug does a lot. Doug, I should just say that flat out. Doug does a lot, but then also what he does a lot of is the security fixes, the maintenance fixes, bug releases and stuff like that. But what that leaves off is the next generation of features, right? Which is TypeScript support, which is HTTP2 support. All of these things that we think are really important, but take a lot of work to do the hardcore feature development. And because myself and Doug spend most of our time on general project upkeep, keeping the lights on, it means that sometimes some of the features, aren't moving ahead as we would like. So what we are working toward is a couple of programs. The first one, which we've worked with the package maintenance working group on setting up, so thanks to all the package maintenance working group folks, because they've been very helpful, is a triager program. So let me pull up, I think it's, well, I'll just go look for the issue really quick. Actually, I think we have a pull request open. Add a triager section. So Dresh spearheaded this. He is a contributor on the Node project, but a bunch of other places, and he's been a great resource for Express as he's been onboarding here. So basically what he started, and as you'll see, it's still open because we're still working on some of the documentation details. But basically we have a new triager team. So let me, actually, this would maybe be better. The branch is called triage. I'll just pull up that doc. It's in the contributing. Yeah, here we go. So we have a new team, list of triagers here. So we've got a bunch of people who have been onboarded. As you can see here, there's quite a few more open PRs right now for people who want to get involved. But the general idea of the triager group is that this is sort of a introductory way to start getting involved in the project. So I won't repeat all of what I said in the talk I gave at Node Interactive in December, but I'll give sort of the quick hit, which is, this is how I got started on the project. I started following the repos. I started chiming in when folks had questions. It was a really good way for me to learn about the project and learn about all the things that were going on. So what we thought would be a nice thing would be to formalize some of this into an official role in the project. So that's kind of what this is. So basically it is, you apply, you have to read some of the documentation and agree to sort of our terms of what we're looking for, and the code of conduct and all of that stuff. But then basically you get the triager role, which gives you the ability to do things like close and tag issues. So basically what the goal is that these folks have maybe some knowledge or maybe certain focused knowledge in a part of the project, and they just want to be there to help out, learn more, and help as they can. The idea is that it's not as time committing as some of the more involved roles, like being a committer, doing feature development, or especially like being on the TC itself. But the goal would be that these folks feel like if they want to increase their involvement, they can move from this triage role into a more active role in the project. So I'll pause there and ask, does anybody have questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could, and I'll defer if anyone else has questions as well. But my thought is, can you explain more like what triage work is like in the Express project? And I'll just add that I could imagine folks being a little intimidated by helping to manage issues, because there might be some assumption of depth of knowledge of the project. Like what's the barrier to entry on triaging, and what's sort of the regular work look like?
Absolutely, that's a great question. I'm going to stop my screen share for just a second because I didn't mute Slack notifications and I have my work Slack. So I'm going to just quickly pause that so that
here's a pro tip: if folks
right?
are on a Mac, there's an accessibility option, I think, or some sort of keyboard shortcut. I'd have to look it up, but you can create a keyboard shortcut for disabling notifications. I learned this when I was looking for a job, and my manager would be over my shoulder, and I would see an alert come up, and I'd have to quickly dismiss it. It's also good for presentations too.
Yeah, good call. I'll take a look at that for that next time.
Yeah.
But anyway, now I've muted notifications, so those won't be popping up in the corner anymore. So anyway, so what does it look like to be a triager, and sort of what is the how do we definitely want to make sure we lower the barrier to entry here for people. So it requires no foundational knowledge. You can just be interested. If you haven't even used Express before, that's fine. So what we've seen is there are a lot of questions folks have. Oh, and now I have another. Sorry, I have too many Slack rooms, so they're all going to start going off. So I need to just quit Slack. Give me just a second here. Because I don't have that keyboard shortcut set up. Okay, back to where we were. Okay, cool. So we find that we get a lot of folks who are just new to JavaScript, new to Node. They're not even often asking questions about Express. Sometimes it's like my package JSON, they don't know this, but what it is like a syntax error in a package JSON. And they're like, Express won't install, please help. And all it takes is looking at that, and they'll post often, well, sometimes they don't post anything, and you just have to ask, okay, can you post your package JSON? Can you post some code snippets? But oftentimes they will post, the package JSON. You say, oh, look, there's a missing quote there, or there's a missing comma. And that, because Express has this position in the ecosystem as sort of one of the on-ramps to JavaScript server-side development at all, we get a really broad range of questions from folks. And so the triage team, I think, is really well suited for folks who just want to be exposed to some of these types of questions, and sometimes you're not even expected to answer. Like, other folks might have chimed in before you, but it's a good way to be able to see those as they come in and see what kind of issues folks are having. And it's not expected that everybody even comments and helps, but just being available if you can. And it looks like the chat does pop up. Okay, I'll keep that off the screen then. Right, even if you're not super like feeling empowered as a solving their technical issue, just being there to to help and provide support. Even like if you were to run their code, even if you don't have a solution, just running their code and producing a reproducible test case is often like the best step forward. So I should mention in here, I thought we had, am I on the right? I'm on the triage branch. I thought we had a description, but now I'm missing it. So let me go back over here. That has like a list of suggestions for folks. Not at triage section. I just could have sworn it was in here. But basically it has a bunch of these kind of things. Jaresh did a great job writing up. In contributing. Okay, well, basically here we talk a little bit about, the different tags we use. So I'll go into these in a second. Here we go, other helpful hints. So this would be a great place to start if folks want to understand sort of what Jaresh's his experience coming on as a triager was and certain things that he learned from it. He wrote up a bunch of these into this other helpful hints section.
Hey, Wes, can you just zoom in a little bit?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
For some folks to see. Thanks.
Yep. So we'll post links here as well to some of these, since they're not all merged up yet, and it might be a little harder to find them until we get that finished. But yeah, does that? So do you think that answers some of the questions there?
I think so.
On how to onboard? Okay, Cool. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I do actually have one. So after what you mentioned, it'll be kind of ideal to kind of understand what is expected of kind of like a triager. I know you mentioned that there's no in-depth knowledge, or maybe if you haven't used Express at all, but if you can point out what's expected for any triager to help with the doing any activities.
Sure, yeah. So so I think the onboarding guide here talks a little bit about it, and basically what we recommend folks to do is to take a look at this status board. We have some issues tagged, and we have a list of projects. So the expectation is that a new triager would come and take a look at this list of projects. I imagine a lot of folks don't realize how many repos Express actually is.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you just touch on that a little bit? Because that's a lot of projects.
It is, and so that's a little bit intimidating, and that's one of the worries we have. So if anybody has feedback on how we can help make that more approachable, that would be very welcome. So basically, Express is broken down into 3 organizations on GitHub. So Express.js, which is the primary project. This contains Express itself. It contains some discussion repos, stuff like that. But it also contains the top-level middlewares that Express maintains. So what I mean by this, so we'll go down, they happen to be all sort of grouped here at the bottom. What I mean by this is things like body parser, which parses the HTTP request body, things like Multer, which does similar to body parser, it does form data HTTP parsing, multi-part form data, things like session. So those all sit at this top level Express.js repo. Then we have the next level down, which is Pillar.js. So this has a few less projects, but these are also very important ones. So for example, router. So in Express 5, we've pulled the router out of Express Core. It's now sitting over here. We have Path to Regex, which is the route parsing. So this is just like when you have a parameterized route like /:foo, that turns into rec.params.foo in your middleware. So this does the parsing there. This package is also widely used outside of the Express ecosystem. So like React Router, for example. So this is for sort of bring your own framework componentry. Koa uses a few of these as well. So that's sort of the middle tier. And then the lowest tier is JS HTTP. So all of these repos are things that are like low-level HTTP related implementations. So for example, cookie, where's cookie? So we have cookies here, right? So that's related to cookie parsing. Vary is the HTTP thing, range parser, HTTP thing. Proxy adder is processing the HTTP X forwarded for header, right? So these are all like lower level things, but all of these are bundled under the Express orgs because they make up, they're mostly dependencies of Express, whether direct or transitive. So that was a little bit maybe of a deep dive. Does anybody have any questions on that, on the structure? No? Okay. So back to the triaging part, our recommendation is folks take a quick look over this and see if anything stands out to them as areas of interest for them. If you're really interested in the way that the Express router works, like that's a great place to start. If you're interested in cores or, anyway, you pick your area of interest and then click through. So let's take a look at the router. I think this is, well, that might have less. Oh, and then one thing Jaresh pointed out in the documentation, which is a great way to get started. Take a look at the open PRs and open issues, and focusing on ones that maybe look like they have more than you would expect is usually a nice way to start. So I think router does have some good things we might take a look at. So when you go in, we have a couple of labels. that are, I think, key things for folks to look at. And I'll go back here really quick. If you go to issues, we also have those same labels represented here, and this does across all of the orgs. So help wanted and discuss, I think, are particularly good ones. Look, there's a lot of discuss ones for people to get started on. So let's take a quick look over here in router again. So for example, here is one by me. Let's not go to one by me. Let's go to one by somebody else. Here, this is, okay, I was pretty sure I would find this one. So here we have TypeScript typings. We have discuss, help wanted, and top priority labels. So these top priority ones are really great ones. These are ones we've identified as the technical committee as ones that we think are, if somebody was to say, what is the most important things you could work on in the Express ecosystem, these would be it. So here, as a triager, what we would like people to do, so this was opened a long time ago, but imagine this was opened today, right? The goal would be that folks who are on the triage team come in and they take a read and they say, hey, okay, we're any chance of getting some types, router typings published, or are they floating around? The triage team expectation would be is if you had any knowledge of typings, you would come in and share that. If you didn't, but you thought that this was an important issue for folks on the TC to see, you would come in and say, hey, at so-and-so. So in this case, Blake chimed in. And as you can see, he chimed in back when this was opened in October of 2016, which is, you know, a little bit sad that it's still open here at this point. But, you know, and he is a TypeScript person. So he chimed in really quick. Basically with the effectively the triaging answer, which is, you know, what we were doing at the time, which was definitely typed. So as a triage team member, if you feel free to opt out if you don't have an answer or don't, you know what to do next. But if you do, the goal would be you are able to help move the ball forward without necessarily getting a TC member involved in the conversation. Now, TC members, myself and Doug often, and Blake in this case, are often watching all of these and chime in very quickly. Don't see that as a reason not to also chime in if you have input. But you know, as we have more workload, it has been more and more common that, you know, triage team members are able to come in and very quickly help folks get answers. So in this case, what would have been expected would be that the triage team member could throw on the discuss or help wanted label, which would help us organize and up-level these discussions to the community, because then the goal is once they're labeled, they would show up back over here and folks who were, again, looking for something to participate in would be able to find them. So in this case, like I said, it's a bit out of date because I just recently added the top priority label to that TypeScript issue. But the goal would be that actually shows up in this list here on the status board. So does that help answer your question? And because it doesn't show the folks who were talking, I actually don't know who asked that question. So maybe if you could also share your name, that'd be great.
I think it was Juan.
Yep. Yeah,
Juan
that was me. Juan.
Okay. Hey, does that sort of help a little bit?
Yeah. Yes, sure it does.
Cool. So anyway, so that's the triage. So before we move on to the next couple of things, and I think I'm going longer than I intended for this. I was hoping to give a quick spiel, but I'm being a little long-winded. If anybody minds and wants to interrupt me, feel free. But does anybody have any questions on the triage topic?
Nope.
Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. So triage was sort of our first, let's get a better onboarding story. But our next one, which is very timely because we talked about it last night on our TC call, is the Repo Captains. So we did this call last night. There were a few folks involved. It was great. But one of the topics that came up, which has been sort of slowing some of the progress across the different projects involved in the Express org, is that we don't have a good structure around divvying up work across the repos. So I made this proposal back in the beginning of January. The idea is to, triage is sort of the entry level role that we've introduced. Repo captains would be sort of the step below TC members. So a repo captain would be somebody who is delegated official responsibility for helping move a specific part of the project forward. So in this case, I call out that Linus and Blake do this role already, Blake for Path to Regex and Linus for Multer. And the hope is that we can take a similar approach across all of the projects. So if it's not owned by somebody today like Linus or Blake in this case, it typically falls back to Doug. So my proposal here was that we make an official role that we could start bringing people who get more involved in specific repos up to like an official capacity as a step toward the TC maybe, but also you could just stay there and own sort of one important chunk of the Express ecosystem. So I called out, for example, that the generator and router are ones where I think they could really use this. And then basically the role would get, so I have sort of laid out here, they would be expected to participate in that particular project for at least 6 months prior to the request. They would have helped with code contributions as well as triaging, and they would have a few just sort of tactical requirements like having two-factor auth on both their GitHub and NPM, and then they would get publish rights, and we'd have sort of a process around approving and getting people those accesses. So this is sort of the next level of participation that I hope we can get folks starting to get involved at. But again, would be, preferably you would do the triage role for a little bit in an org in one of the repos before you say, hey, and maybe make some code contributions before you say, hey, I would like to sign up as a repo captain.
So with that in mind, Wes, is it the recommendation that someone, I mean, you kind of mentioned it before, but just to kind of confirm that if you're interested in contributing to Express, try to find one or maybe just a handful of modules to focus on, and then that way you do some triaging and then potentially become a repo captain?
Absolutely. I think that is the greatest way to bite off a small chunk, is to just pick one or two repos and follow them. And then again, you could start in the triage role if you want that. You don't have to have the triage role either. But then, yeah, then if, as you grow in the project, to get to like this level, the goal would be that you've participated for at least 6 months. You've helped move the ball forward in some way. And then, we'll give you, I don't know if calling it the keys of the kingdom is the right thing, but the contributor bit and all of that stuff that sort of falls out from having participated. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah. So that one has maybe a little bit less to talk about because we haven't even merged that yet, and we've gotten some approvals. But if you're interested in this stuff, we had a TC meeting last night where we talked about this. And to be clear, you don't have to be a TC member to attend the TC meetings. And we will be having another one next week where we'll be specifically talking about this Repo Captains idea so that we can finalize it, hopefully. And then the next step, which leads me into I'm skipping the tools topic, but it leads me into the Express 5 release. So this all comes up to, we have not gotten the Express 5 release out. It's been much too long. And the reason is because we need some of this, more people power in place to push some of the initiatives forward. So when we discuss this Repo Captains, the next step is, once we've defined who those are for the pieces that we require for the Express 5 release, those folks can go off and finish up those pieces, and then we can get the Express 5 release out. So I want to skip to this a little bit because I think this is the next most important. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. So down here on January 1st, I commented and I said, hey, look, last January we said we'd release in the summer. We still haven't. Here's why. And I set some goals. One of those goals was already passed, which is releasing on the 31st. So we haven't done that because we have these 5 outstanding issues. And if anybody here is willing or wants to get involved in a really impactful way, these are sort of the 5 most important things to get the Express 5 release over the line. So we've committed to having a TC meeting every Thursday until this is released. So this is a great time to get involved in the project because we have a lot to get done, and there will be a big payoff, which will be, having your name in the Express 5 release notes. I guess if that people see that as a big payoff, but I see it as, because it's it's like, yeah, we helped move this thing over the finish line.
Well, and it's momentous, right? I mean, the version 5 has been in the works for a long time.
Yes, if you look at this, is I think. I hate looking at these things because it makes me feel just really sad. But yes, since 2014. There's a reason. There's a ton of reasons. Like, look at all these things we've gotten done. And Express 4, I should just be clear, Express has been moving forward. The 4 line has had tons of feature additions, tons of bug fixes, ton of security things fixed. Like, work is being done. It's just that work is not, and I scrolled past the important part, that work just has not finished these couple of key items that we wanted on the 5, release. So the more people we have working on this, our goal is that 6 is 1 year after 5, right? 7 should be 1 year after 6. Like, we want to get on a much more solid release cadence, but to do that, it takes people. And Express is asking, we are asking for more people to help, and in all sorts of roles. Everything from, like I said, from the introductory stuff, triaging, to we'd love to have a TC that is 20 people, if that's what if we can get and is effective for managing the project. So lots of opportunities for folks to get involved.
That's great. I have a minor question here. Number 3 on your list there, status undefined. What's with those issues?
Yeah. So when you call res.status, so this is going maybe into the technical weeds here. One of the APIs in Express is Sugar APIs that we add onto the Node Core response object is a status method, which will set the status for the response. It is in the Express 4 line valid, and I say valid in sort of a tongue-in-cheek way, to send status undefined. That will throw if you try to send the response to the browser or to the client, but you can set it and then as undefined, and then set it again later as 200, right? And that is a feature, quote unquote, of Express 4 that was unintended and that folks coupled to. So when we tried to release this in the 4 line, it broke a ton of people. They were doing something that was sort of an undocumented thing, which was set it to undefined at the beginning of the response, the request handling process, and then using the fact that it's undefined later to indicate that they haven't, quote unquote, handled the response yet. But this was sort of an implementation detail that they were leveraging that wasn't intended. So this is to fix that, but because we tried to fix it in 4 and everybody, we had to revert it, it has moved to the 5 branch. So these are just issues and PRs related. So like here, if you see, we have issue, PR. So we have 3 PRs fixing different parts of it. So the idea here is just we need to get one of those merged, like people open the PRs and then like never came back, or something like that in all of these cases. So
cool.
So well, I'm sorry, quick question. So pretty much the what you need for those is just you need someone to keep the momentum going and kind of like pick up what whoever tried to to do or was proposing when they created the PR to just, get it done and get
Yeah,
it
exactly.
merged?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So the one of the things we've seen be successful, there was a bunch of other things on this original list when we scroll up to the top here, where there was an original PR and we said, hey, we need tests for it and we need a little bit of documentation, and the people just disappeared. So what often will happen, and I think this recently happened, well, I'll end up digging and not finding it, so I'll just mention how it happened. Somebody just basically took the commits that already existed, refactored them, and then submitted a new PR with the same commits from before with the additional test commits. So that's like a perfectly acceptable way to move the ball forward. And basically, yeah, that's what we would need on these ones for sure. This one, I think, so this, oh, what did I click on the wrong tab? Maybe? Yeah, here we go. Oh, so I knew it happened recently. Well, I guess this is not recent, but here we go. Oh no, this is not the one I was thinking. Anyway, basically, this one is a good example. So we have extended to simple as the default for query parsing. But this needs some changes. This needs, I think, some tests. Like the idea here would be you'd take this PR, add tests, and then make a new PR and just say, this is continuing the work from here. Hopefully this is enough to get it finished. And then we would, merge it once it has those things fulfilled. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yep. Is there a process? Because some, I wouldn't like to grab someone's work and try to add, and some people kind of are sensitive about that. So is there like a way, code of conduct or kind of contributing guidelines?
There are both of those, but they do not cover this topic. So I would recommend to you to not worry a ton about it. The work being done is what really matters here. Posting and saying, hey, did you plan to follow up with this? If not, I've opened this PR here that adds tests to your work, I think is nice, but definitely not required. If you look here, again, sorry, that thing keeps on popping up over my tabs. Can I move the, yeah, I can totally. Okay, if you look here, started in April 2015 of 2018, last commented April, no response. So like if you went and did this, I think nobody would complain, especially if you do what I said, which is take the commits that are already there and just update them, because then what would happen is it'd be an amended commit and the person who did the initial work would still get, and again, this is sort of shouldn't matter, but I think does to some folks, commit credit, right?
Yeah. It's a good question, though. I think it's good, to be polite and just chime in, but certainly moving the ball forward is the most important thing.
Right. Yep. So and you would not be the first, second, 100th, 1000th person to have done this in the Express org. So it's a pretty common thing is people will submit PRs, maybe they're working on a specific thing at their job or whatever, and then they leave. Like it's pretty flexible, and most of the time when you say I'd like to pick up where your work left off, people are like, yes, please, I didn't want to finish it in the first place. Not any bad reason, just they're busy, people are busy, and open source is everybody committing their free time.
Well, let me ask you a question, thinking about first time contributors perspective here. Are any like mentors available? And I don't necessarily mean like, let's sit down for an hour, but like, I want to work on this feature, here's what I'm seeing, bouncing something off of someone, and just, being able to feel confident that you can get in there and get the work done and have somebody sort of, who's got your back a little bit.
Yeah, they're to help. I think that's a great question. And so we don't have anything official right now. I think there's a lot of reasons why we maybe should have something official there. That said, myself, Doug chime in a lot. Hopefully helping to move the ball forward. I would hope that the triage team would also be willing to do that. And I've seen a couple of folks step up to the plate on that so far. So I think that there is usually somebody there to help. And if you are interested and that is a big concern for you, definitely reach out to me. I am willing to, time constraints, with respect to time constraints, I may have to hand you off to somebody else, but I think we can definitely work with anybody who needs some of that and wants to get some support onboarding. So I know that's not a super great answer, but I'm on Twitter. You can at me.
I mean, I think that's what what folks could expect, and not too much more, but just having somebody available to even route to someone else or just to check in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a great question, and I know the Node, Node has a mentorship program, and I think the package maintenance working group has talked a little bit about some of these topics. So I think it'd be pretty nice if the community could come together a little bit on this, because individual projects, it's pretty hard. Like we're spending a lot of time building up some of these things like the triage team, and that takes away from working on the project. So I think having third party is maybe not the right way to put it, but like some support from more community focused groups, I think would really help projects in that way. Maybe that's an idea for the foundation to help with. And I think actually I say that as I have a tab open with Michael's suggestion for having a OpenJS Foundation. I don't know what he called
it. Collaboration network.
Yeah, that was it. Which I think would be a phenomenal idea. I haven't had a chance to comment on the issue yet, but
yeah, it's interesting. I've been trying to put a lot of thought into how to get more people involved in open source and thinking through some of these things. One conversation I had, and maybe this is a little off topic, but I'll share, is in Node they have the mentorship program, but that's really like a mentor and a mentee or two, and like there's an expectation that you would spend time really mentoring someone. Whereas I'm thinking about just being able to ping someone and be like, can you take a quick look at this and see if I'm off base? And I've discussed this with another member on the Node community committee about the concept of like micro mentorship, like being able to, spend 5 or 10 minutes just like, looking over a PR or something and getting some feedback or this sort of micro mentorship angle, less commitment and perhaps more effective in just moving things forward.
I think that's a great idea. I have both went out of my way to ask people for micro mentorship and I hope given some micro mentorship sort of as ad hoc. But I think having, like I said, having official structures for this kind of stuff helps people because they know they're doing it right and there's a lot less ambiguity. Some folks open source has so much ambiguity already that it's a little bit intimidating or a lot intimidating, I guess. And so I think us having, structures in place to help reduce that ambiguity so people know if they're asking, they could, read a document and say, yeah, micro mentorship is actually what I want. I don't want to spend weekly time. I just want somebody to help look at this one PR, I think there would be a lot of value there.
Yeah, we need to figure out how we can put something like that into place that is sort of not automated, but is, just sort of works on its own.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
We only have a few minutes left. I want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to ask questions or, make comments or otherwise, get engaged. Anybody got anything?
I have a question.
Great.
Is there like a Discord or a Slack channel for Express?
So we have a couple of things, and I think we should also tighten up the story here too. So we have a Gitter, which is fairly active with community members, not so much active with any of the project members. We have the Slack, the Node.js Slack community, which I think you can go to nodeslackers.com.
Yep.
There's a,
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah, I looked that up just yesterday. Nodeslackers.com. I'm sharing it with another person.
And so we have an Express.js channel there that has some good discussions. I'm always in there, so that's, I think, one good place. We also, and Joe, well, see, we created do we see the OpenJS Foundation Slack being a place for these kind of things? I don't want to volunteer it if.
No, it's a very good question. And I think, first of all, you know, the more the merrier there. So I encourage that in general. Whether a project makes that the canonical place to go for discussions is, I think, up for debate. But I think the good thing is that Node Slackers obviously has been around for a while. It's a community Slack org, and it's got a lot of people on there and a lot of conversation, and it's a good community place. The issue is that it's the free version, if I'm not mistaken, and so messages disappear pretty quickly now that there's a lot of activity there. The OpenJS Slack org is a paid or open source or whatever it is. We get it, and messages are not deleted, and so it's kind of a, you know, might be better to move some things over to there. I just don't know, because a lot of the Node community is in Node Slackers, so. That's still kind of up for debate. I think, you know, either one works, whatever you feel more comfortable with for now.
I would also like to point out that Slack is very bad for communities. Discord is actually quite a bit better for communities. It has moderation tools and stuff in place that I think are important and entirely lacking in Slack. I'm guessing the popularity of Slack for this is mostly because folks are using it at work, and having a Discord window open at work. You know, I don't know if I'd be open to having one if. And sorry, you didn't say your name. I'm not sure who I'm talking to.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that was Danielle.
Yeah, I was Danielle.
Okay, hey Danielle.
Hey.
If there is a best place to run something like that, I'd absolutely be on board with doing that and figuring out, you know, what it takes. Like I said, right now we're sort of fragmented in that.
Cool.
So if you have any suggestions and something, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say just really quickly that's kind of a good. This sort of exemplifies that it's not always just code that projects need help with. I think that even just like helping manage and figure out what's working and what isn't, and get the story streamlined on certain things is another great way to be involved too.
I couldn't
not that I'm
recommend that
suggesting
more.
you do that, Danielle.
I couldn't recommend that more. Honestly, though, that's such a great point, because these need everything that you need at your job when you're working on a technical project. They need a diverse set of opinions on things. They need people doing all these different roles. And in open source, unfortunately, people get so hung up on the code contributions that they forget that, like, there's all this other stuff. So if anybody is interested in participating in that, please reach out to me, because I've been trying to do some of it, and because I'm stretched too thin, I've been doing a poor job on many parts of it. So any help there would be phenomenal. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely reach out to me.
Thanks.
So yeah.
Anybody have any other questions or comments? Is anybody thinking about getting involved with Express? Ryan?
Yeah. Hey, this is Ryan. I've watched Wes's talk at the JS Interactive conference a few weeks ago, and getting a bit involved. And I just want to say, you know, it's been a really positive experience so far, in that I know someone asked a bit about like mentorship and things like that. And while there's nothing like formally in place, I can vouch for the fact that both Wes and Doug get involved quickly and are very responsive to help answer questions or points of clarification or anything like that.
Great.
Yeah, awesome. And I think I still need to merge your darn PR. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yeah. I'm, and I totally skipped. We're working on a ton of tooling because we're so stretched thin as far as resources. We have been trying to get some automation in place. Of course, as you know, all of us engineers probably are like laughing at this. You know, I've spent my time trying to work on the darn automation instead of just manually merging and doing all that. So if anybody is interested in some of the like OPSI and in you know, automation stuff, there's a lot of opportunities there. That isn't all happening in the Express orgs. Most of that's happening in the PKG.js org, which is one that we're working on making official, but is part of the Node project. So this is an offshoot of the package maintenance working group. So if anybody's interested in that, also reach out to me. There's a lot of opportunities there. The status board is one example of that. We did that to help bring things together, and that lives in the PKG.js org. We're working on, I started a membership manager, which would automate the process of people opening these PRs, and all we as the TC would have to do is approve it, and then it would automatically merge and assign them all the roles across the orgs. But today that takes me maybe, you know, 10 minutes per thing to just, you know, read it, make sure it's all good, and then add them to the orgs and stuff. Which is why I haven't done it. I'm sorry, Ryan. But feel free to continue to nag me, and you know, hopefully I will have time soon.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
Okay.
Cool, that's helpful. And yeah, I wonder too about just kind of off topic here, but like, you know, automation and such at the OpenJS Foundation level, you know, things that could be useful for a variety of projects. But I'll check with you offline about that, Wes.
Yeah, I think yeah, we can talk offline for sure, because I know we only have 2 minutes. But also, the package maintenance working group is the place to go for a lot of those discussions. That's where a lot of this stuff has started. So if anybody's interested there, it's github.com/node.js/package-maintenance. And there's a ton of, I think that group is maybe now a couple of years old, and we've had tons of discussions on all sorts of different ways to make maintaining packages and these projects easier for folks. So.
Cool. Yeah, well, we only have a minute left, so I'll wrap up here. I appreciate everybody joining, and you know, thanks, Wes, for going through all of this. We spent a lot of time here, but I think it was really valuable, and I appreciated it. My DMs are open on Twitter, so if anybody has any questions that they want to, you know, follow up on, feel free to reach out to me, and you know, I can connect you to Wes or any other folks. And I sort of, you know, thought we might spend some time with Express, but also have time for other things. So if you joined and want to talk about something other than Express, feel free to ping me on Twitter, or you know, we'll have another meeting in 2 weeks. And yeah, I guess we'll call it a wrap. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And also my Twitter DMs, I think, are open as well. So if you want to follow up on any of these conversations. Thanks.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Cool. Thanks, Wes. I'll check with you later.
Okay, cool.
Adios.
Yep. See ya.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Liz. See ya.